Hello, friend. How are you today? I hope you're well. Now, to really be good at a language, it's really nice to appreciate and understand some of the culture. So today we're going to look at 1990s culture because I am 42 and I was 8 years old going into the 90s. And so I had my teenage years in the 1990s. So today we're going to look at the 90s culture. Music and Britpop, the sound of the 90s. The British music scene in the 90s was dominated by Britpop, a movement that celebrated British identity and pushed back against American grunge. It blended rock, indie, and pop influences, with the lyrics often reflecting working class life and British culture. So music at that time was really powerful. It felt very fresh and new because they talked about the struggles that people were having and they combined this with British culture. Oasis, the Manchester band led by Liam and Noel Gallagher, defined the 90s with hits like Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger and Live Forever. Their 1996 album, What's the Story? Morning Glory, became one of the UK's best-selling records ever. And there was a bit of a battle between Oasis and Blur. At the time, I was on the side of Oasis. Let me know, who did you prefer, Oasis or Blur? However, I did like some of Blur's songs. Now, Blur, they had more of a London-centric, cheeky style, and they produced classics like Park Life, Girls and Boys, and Song 2. In particular, I love the song 2. It's really iconic. Then you had Pulp, known for Common People and Disco 2000. Pulp captured British class struggles and nightlife. Then you had Suede and Elastica. Suede brought a darker, artier side to Britpop, while Elastica blended punk and indie rock. Now, beyond Britpop, the Spice Girls led the girl power movement, bringing British pop to a global audience with songs like Wannabe. The Spice Girls were huge at the time. They felt like the biggest band in the world, and they just went beyond music and they went into culture, and you couldn't escape from the Spice Girls. And I think this really elevated the perception of Britain at the time in terms of producing music that was fresh and fun. The dance and electronic music scene also exploded with acts like The Prodigy, Fatboy Slim, Underworld, and Massive Attack. I think the 90s was almost the golden age for music because you have so many different types of genres. In particular, I loved Massive Attack. It felt like music that came from another planet, and you couldn't believe what you were hearing. And you were just so happy to have such a vast selection of different types of music. Garage music also started rising, leading to the UK garage boom in the early 2000s. So UK garage music, it's like a fast and bouncy style of dance music. It mixes house, jungle, R&B sounds with a strong bass, catchy beats, and chopped up vocals. Some popular artists are Artful Dodger, Craig David, and MJ Cole. And the music, again, it just felt really fresh and different, and it felt like you were one of the first, you were at the forefront of this type of music that was eventually going to become extremely popular. But you were there at the beginning experiencing this type of music. Football and Euro 96. When football came home, the 1990s were a golden era for English football, both in terms of club football and international excitement. The Premier League was formed in 1992, revolutionizing English football with TV deals, international players, and modern stadiums. Being an Arsenal supporter, the 90s were a golden age for us, winning trophies and having amazing players like Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, Perez, Bergkamp. Arsenal were playing such exciting football, and there was a intense rivalry between Manchester United, and the drama that we witnessed was just amazing. Now, Manchester United, they dominated in the 90s, winning multiple league titles under Sir Alex Ferguson. They've been on a drastic decline, but in the 90s, they were dominant. Euro 96, hosted in England, created a wave of national pride. England reached the semi-finals before losing on penalties to Germany. And it was amazing being a teenager at that time, finishing school and not having to worry about paying bills or having to work, and just spending your days playing video games and watching Euro 96. And the country was just enveloped with a national sense of pride. Everyone was happy and just really joyful to see England doing well. The song Three Lions, Football's Coming Home, became the unofficial anthem of English football. Football wasn't just a sport, it was a major part of British identity, influencing fashion, music, and media. Now, talking about fashion, let's have a look at the fashion at the time. So, fashion was heavily influenced by music, football, and pop culture. Tracksuits and sportswear were extremely popular. You had brands like Adidas, Nike, Reebok. These dominated, and to a certain extent, they still do today. You have some newcomers like New Balance or Under Armour, and these were often worn with white trainers. You had rave culture fashion, so baggy jeans, bucket hats, neon colors, and oversized t-shirts were everywhere at clubs and festivals. Britpop style, bands like Oasis and Blur popularized Parkers, Fred Perry shirts, Dr. Martens, and vintage sportswear. You had the Spice Girls look, where people wore platform shoes, mini dresses, crop tops, and colorful accessories. Football shirts as everyday wear. Club shirts, especially Manchester United and England jerseys, were part of casual fashion. So you could really see how at that time in particular, people were influenced by football and musicians, and they were emulating their style. TV and films, the golden age of British entertainment. British TV and cinema were thriving, with many shows and films from the 90s still being iconic today. Some popular TV shows at the time, you had Absolutely Fabulous. This was a satirical comedy about the world of fashion and celebrity excess. The Vicar of Dibley, a classic British sitcom about a female vicar in a small village. Men Behaving Badly. This was the ultimate 90s lad sitcom reflecting young British men's lives. This was iconic for the lad culture, which is something we'll go into in a bit. TFI Friday and The Big Breakfast. This was fun, chaotic TV talk shows featuring top celebrities and bands. This is most common in America, I think, where the shows, they have lots of energy and they are interacting with the audience. And this was introduced to the UK at the time. Many people used to watch TFI Friday on a Friday at 6 p.m. before getting ready to go out to the club in the evening. And The Big Breakfast, I remember watching this before school. It had lots of energy and it would wake you up before having to go to school. And you felt like you wanted to wake up to watch The Big Breakfast. So it was really helpful to get into school or to get into work. Teletubbies, the weird but hugely popular children's show that became a global phenomenon. This show, I don't know how and why it did so well. It was very weird and very strange, but extremely popular. British films that defined the decade. Trainspotting. This was a dark, stylish and gritty look at Edinburgh's drug scene featuring Ewan McGregor. This movie was amazing. You had Four Weddings and a Funeral, the film that made Hugh Grant a star and defined British romantic comedies. Notting Hill, another Hugh Grant hit, pairing him with Julia Roberts in a story about a bookshop owner and a Hollywood star. So you had different types of movies. You had Trainspotting, which is quite gritty and focusing on life, dealing with drugs and making choices. And then you had the British rom-coms, and Hugh Grant led the way with that. Then you had films like Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, which was a fast-paced film, gangster film made by Guy Ritchie, and this really made him famous, and he went on to make similar types of movies. So British cinema in the 90s had a mix of edgy, realism, romantic charm, and world-class storytelling. Technology and gaming. The 1990s saw the birth of the digital age, though in a much simpler form than today. And this is something universal to the whole of the world, but I will give you the British take of it in the 90s. So you had dial-up internet, the slow, noisy connection that meant no one could use the phone while you were online. I remember getting into numerous arguments with my mum when she wanted to make a telephone call and she would hear the static. So I would have to turn off the internet and wait until she finished her phone call. You had internet service providers like AOL, which dominated the market at that time. And the internet was incredibly slow. You had phones like the Nokia 3210, which is completely different to phones of today. And you had the game Snake, which was incredibly addictive. PlayStation 1 came out, and you had games like Tomb Raider, Gran Turismo, and Final Fantasy. They bring back such fond memories, such innocent times of just playing these fun games and not having to worry about anything else in your life. You had Tamagotchis. This was the virtual pet craze that took over the playgrounds, and everyone wanted a little Tamagotchi, a little virtual pet, and they just became very difficult to find. So earlier I mentioned lad culture. So the 90s saw the rise of lad culture, a mix of football, beer, and irreverent humor. So it was an opportunity for men to be non-apologetic about their lives, and magazines like FHM, Loaded, and Maxim became huge, featuring interviews with footballers, musicians, and models. Comedians like Peter Kay and Ricky Gervais thrived in this era of sarcastic, blokey humor. Football, drinking, and nights out were often glorified in the media, reflecting a working class and youth-driven culture. So there was a culture of drinking heavily, which you don't have today, and it was even linked with football. So a lot of footballers used to drink heavily, and I remember when Arsene Wenger, the Arsenal coach, came in and he changed people's diets, stopped the footballers from drinking and becoming more professional. And over time, that lad culture diminished and reduced. Politics and the cool Britannia era. The late 90s were marked by Tony Blair's new Labour government elected in 1997. Blair's victory symbolized change, optimism, and modernization after nearly 2 decades of conservative rule. It was almost like the shackles were off and people were fed up of the conservatives and wanted to be free and to express themselves. The Cool Britannia movement celebrated British music, art, and culture worldwide. Blair was even photographed with Oasis's Noel Gallagher at 10 Downing Street. So this was quite interesting. It was a change from politicians mixing with celebrities and musicians. There was a sense that Britain was at the center of global pop culture, with music, film, and sports booming. So why do the 90s still matter today? Well, the 1990s left a lasting impact on Britain. Music. Britpop's influence can still be seen in British indie rock. Football. The Premier League is now the richest and most watched league in the world. Fashion. 90s styles like tracksuits, Dr. Martens, and vintage sportwear have made a comeback. TV and film. Shows like Absolutely Fabulous and films like Trainspotting remain classics. Technology. So the 90s saw the birth of the internet culture. You even see people adopting dumb phones. So they're fed up of smartphones and the addiction that follows, and they're using dumb phones like the old Nokias instead. Now, so the 1990s, I think it was such a unique blend of youth, of culture, of music, of fashion and sports. And it created a national identity that's still remembered fondly today. So you had things like Britpop, football fever, the rise of technology. I think I'm quite grateful to have grown up in the 90s, to be honest, compared to growing up in the 2000s or the 2010s, because you had a sense of national pride in terms of the music, the movies, the culture, and it felt quite different. And I think the lack of social media, as I said before, probably contributes to that. And people used to be out of the house a lot more. So whether it be meeting up more or going out clubbing or going to the pub or meeting up more, and with social media and phones, it's easier to keep in contact with people and not really go out as much. But the 90s, it's still relevant today. You still have people adopting the fashion, for example, and then having like a retro look, and then it becomes more popular today. So let me know, did you grow up in the 90s? What do you think about the 90s? And also, it'll be interesting to know, if you grew up in the 90s in your country, how was the music, the TV, the fashion? So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And remember, I have a free ebook that I have created for you. It contains 5 amazing practical tips to help you to improve your English. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next lesson. Thank you, and bye-bye.